And so the first thing I want to talk about is the narrative about Appalachia. For 100 years, the outside world has been discovering Appalachia and urban Appalachians every now and then. And that goes back to romantic literature of the 1890s, and around that time, writers like John Fox Jr. And these outside writers have either regarded Appalachia as missionary territory or as a place of exotic people, you know, our contemporary ancestors and that sort of thing. That was kind of the first discovery. And Eastern Magazine's articles were followed by East Coast and Lexington, Kentucky missionaries who came in to save us. Then, you know, depending on what was going on in the world, the narrative would change. All those people were coming up here to work in our factories during World War II. That produced an article in the Chicago Sun-Times called "Hillbillies Invade Chicago," you know, and people of concern. Anyhow, we were always either these romantic, true Native Americans, which were going to save the nation because we were pure Anglo-Saxon stock or pure Scotch-Irish stock, and at a time when immigrants were coming from all over the world, like during the 20s, Appalachia was going to save the country just by breeding, you know, breeding white people. That narrative is still with us in J.D. Vance's book. Scotch-Irish, he doesn't mention the blacks in Appalachia or the Cherokees and people that they intermarried with, the multiracial communities throughout Appalachia, or the new Hispanics coming in, the people who come from Eastern Europe to work in the coal mines. You know, all that diversity is there, and it's there here in Cincinnati in our Appalachian community too. And I'll ask you to think about, just for example, what narrative does the Cincinnati Enquirer use in reporting on Appalachians either in Ohio or here in Cincinnati? Anybody have a thought about that? What stories have you seen about either Appalachian Ohio, Appalachian Kentucky, or neighborhoods like Lower Placer?
There's a series that started a few over the weekend about the route, highway something, and lost the route in the community. I assume that's maybe heavily Appalachian in that area that they're writing about.
And I will give the Enquirer credit. They have at least two narratives. Every now and then they try to do kind of an enlightened story about some positive effort in Lower Price Hill, like forming of a Girl Scouts team. And this is historically true, that every now and then they do something just really high quality enlightened journalism. The other narrative is there too. They just did a major article or series on Portsmouth, Ohio, which is all about substance abuse, corruption of government. You know, the stereotype of Appalachia is a hopeless place where even we have exposed, they in effect said, we have exposed the corruption, the sex trafficking by government leaders and all this stuff, and the local government is going to do nothing about it. And, you know, the report is true, but of all the things I'm talking about the narrative, the choice of what you cover. You know, have they ever had an article on Appalachian Ohio about positive developments, you know, efforts to, the Ohio River Valley used to be the shoemaking capital of the world. What are those communities doing to recover from the loss of industry in that sort of thing. So, and the Eastern media often get it wrong. Hillbilly Elegy was positively reviewed in almost every major fashionable East Coast publication. And now the narrative is fixed. Appalachians and working class whites are solid country. They're responsible for the mess we're in. And some of the writers, some of the reviewers have said, kind of, God damn them. And you know, they should be at the bottom of the social ladder. And we have people here in Cincinnati who they can understand black poverty because of the 300 years of slavery. They cannot understand why white people should be poor. And I've had people say that to me. You know, social workers say that to me. So I don't want to spend too much time, but we constantly go from they are, after all, are white and they're going to save us, or they are white trash. By the way, the book White Trash deals with some of this. I don't hold it up as a perfect narrative, but it's something you might want to consider reading. It's about the history of how working class whites have been viewed in this country. But anyhow, the stereotypes of crime, violence, drugs, no work ethic. J.D. Vance, who, by the way, is going to speak at CCM by invitation of Community Chest, I pointed out to Ross Meyer that they have invited a really controversial speaker who's been accused of eugenics and promoting eugenics and being friends with Charles Murray and other people who promote that kind of ideology. So Ross and I are going to be, and we are going to be in conversation about that. But, that's some comments about the narrative. Now to deal with some facts, and then we'll have some discussion. First fact is to point out to you where Appalachians live, and when you know the shape of Cincinnati. It's this big long thing, and it has Mill Creek running down the middle of it. And it used to be that the neighborhoods that were concentrations of mostly white Appalachians was an upside-down T that went along the river from Sedamsville over through the East End, and then up through Lower Price Hill, south of Fairmount, Camp Washington, right on up into Lockland, and as far up that route, which used to be an Indian trail, but part of it is Reading Road, all the way to Xenia, Ohio, was kind of a hillbilly trail. That's changing. Neighborhoods like Lower Price Hill and South Fairmount and North Side are becoming much more diverse. Some of it is gentrification. Some of it is white trying to find a better way of life in suburbia. That's happening in the African American community as well. That people who are upwardly mobile want to get out. Or, and as in the case of some of the neighborhoods, like the Reading Road corridor, they're being displaced. There's gentrification even in Lower Price Hill, especially on the hillsides. Some of it is just that social conditions, especially with the various drug epidemics, are becoming intolerably hard to live in, and people are fleeing inner city communities. Over the Rhine's being gentrified, but the area above Liberty Street is still the worst slum in the city. So that whether it's an African American area or a white Appalachian area, some of our neighborhoods are kind of hollowing out. Appalachians are pretty much gone from the east end, so that lops off one part of the upside down T. More poor people are moving into Sedamsville, so the picture varies by neighborhood. But probably the most dramatic fact, other than conditions in some inner city neighborhoods are getting worse rather than better. Probably things are worse in Lower Price Hill right now in some ways than they were 20 years ago. Would you agree with that, Maureen?
In some ways. I mean, one thing, there's been the pressure with people being pushed out in houses being either closed up, boarded up at a certain point in time, and then held for redevelopment.
Another thing I'd like you to remember, though, is that as far as numbers, Appalachians don't live in the upside down T anymore as much as they live all over this area. If you go to the counties out east, they are in Appalachia, like as Brown County. And some of the counties to the south might as well be, and parts of Indiana might as well be. When people came there originally, a lot of Scots-Irish, by the way, came from Virginia and Kentucky, two places like that. And between northern Kentucky and Xenia, Ohio, I estimate there are at least 500,000